Welcome to PEP Talks with Eric, where we shift gears from negative feedback loops and drive towards the life we truly want. I'm your host, Eric Ayers. I believe in the power of Ubuntu. I am because we are. Together, we'll explore how connections fuel our growth and create amazing experiences. In this podcast, we'll tune out the noise of the world and tune into what we really want and what really matters. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining us for another episode of PEP Talks with Coach Eric. I'm your Coach Eric, and today we have an amazing conversation lined up with you. I met this coach the other day. We had a fantastic conversation, and she's doing things, A, I've never heard of, and B, going super deep into the things that a lot of us find either difficult or we want to avoid, and that is conflict resolution. And I'm super excited to bring her on the show. This is Avril Hogan, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. But first of all, I want to say thank you, Avril, for joining us. This is amazing.
Thank you for having me, Eric. It's really nice to be here and reach out to everybody, your audience. I know you're doing some great work with everybody. So for something different, we can talk about conflict resolution today. So a little bit about me. I'm originally from Ireland. I came to the US in 2003. I was involved as a paralegal, and I was a real estate broker for many years. And more recently now, I have got my coaching credentials, and I'm also a mediator. And as a coach and mediator, I hold a space for those who are trying to work through inner conflict as an individual, whether it's family conflict, whether it's divorce, probate. Families in general have a lot of conflict that shows up that can just be helped through. It's not needed to go through to an attorney. And then also there's this community, there's landlord-tenant. There's all different types of mediation that I've become involved in.
That is fascinating. Like I said, most of those or even if not all of those incidences that you highlighted there bring forth an idea of, we can already see and feel the conflict, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's a fight waiting to happen, if you will. So like probate, family members who demand things that they believe is theirs, automatically walking to a space that is potentially hostile or aggravated through anger, that sort of thing. I'm curious, what led you into the space that you're in?
Well, interestingly enough, when I was a 10-year-old kid back in Ireland, I was always curious about people. I was always really into people's stories. I'd be standing at a bus stop, and by the time the bus would come, you would have everybody's life story. And I would wander away wondering how this individual is getting on with their situation. So I was always fascinated with just the humans and why they get involved with people and conflict shows up. Going on into my life, I realized people found it very easy to open up and talk with me. I was always the friend that somebody would ask out when they're having a difficult situation. And I was always a helper. I always loved being there for everybody. And so then I got involved, like I said, more in business. But then I had my own personal transition back in 2016, 17. And I was kind of burned out in real estate. I'd been working really hard, even though I'd been coaching and mediation without even having the credentials within my real estate career. I was seeing a coach myself, and she planted the seed for me. And she said, why don't you go on and do some coaching? So the seed was planted, and everywhere I turned, it just seemed like a great idea. So I went to coaching school thinking how great it would be to help everybody, until I actually learned really the hard way that you're not helping everybody. You have to help people help themselves. And that was a big day for me. But then I realized when you help people help themselves, it's actually less tiring on me and it's more empowering on them. And that was a new day for me. And I've been working in that way ever since. Yeah. Whether that's individuals or couples, it's amazing when you help people find the wisdom within themselves to solve whatever they have going on.
I love that. And I think most coaches have that aha moment of,
Mhm.
oh, I'm a coach, I'm helping people. And then when you realize how impactful it is to empower that other person to help
Mhm.
themselves, it's like, wait a minute, I'm the guide. So
Yeah.
I'm not here to be the knower of all the things. I'm
Right.
here to
You don't
help.
have all the answers. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I found, so coming from healthcare, I found it way easier for me to coach someone outside of healthcare
Yeah.
because I don't know what they're talking about when it comes to law or real estate,
Mm.
or because that's not my expertise, and it's actually a
Mm.
huge value. So I appreciate you sharing that, especially starting as the 10-year-old. You know, the curiosity that we all have leads us where we want
Mhm.
to go if we allow it to. So I love how that correlated. And then we
Yeah.
get old enough and realize, wait a minute, I can hold on to my energy and help
Mhm.
people to even more capacity by
And more people.
and more people.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So
Mhm.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And so the concept that you introduced me to that I was unsure of was ontological coaching. Could you share
Mhm.
a little bit about that? Because this intrigued me.
So when I reached out to start my coaching career, I was just really interested in all the different types of coaching that you can learn. And if I was truly honest, I was still learning about myself too. So I liked the approach of the school that I went to at Newfield Network, and they teach ontological coaching. And the first part of what they teach is about yourself. And you can only coach others when you know yourself well. So really it is actual ontological coaching is realizing that we're all so different. So if we were to go into a room and ask 10 people to take a picture of what was going on in that room, it would be very, very different. But yet what we all have in common is language, emotions, and our body, how we interact with each other in all of those ways. And it's a way of being. So when somebody comes to an ontological coach, they're not necessarily just coming with their goals and where they want to be, is just getting to know themselves, be an observer of themselves, their way of being, how they can change. Normally they will come to you and they say, this is going on. I've tried this. I've tried that. But really, until they bring it back to themselves and be an observer of how they are, who they are, rather than what is going on, they can get in touch with themselves more and make those everlasting changes for themselves.
That is phenomenal on so many levels. I perked up because your example, it reminded me. So sometimes I'll share with people, if you and I were to walk down a street observing, and then we get to the end, we take something and we write down our experience. Even though
Mhm.
we had the same experience, we're going to write down two totally different experiences. We might still
Yeah.
see the red car. There might be some similarities, but it's two totally different situations
Yeah.
because we're coming to the table with different biases, with different
Mhm.
experience, with our metrics is totally
Mhm.
different. So I perked up as you were explaining that
Yeah.
because that makes sense. And when we can get away from the the things that have happened to us or the circumstances
Mhm.
that we've been victims of, and switch that
Mhm.
to how we respond and how
Mhm.
we decide to move forward, I think that is a powerful pivotal moment. And
Yeah.
that's what I gathered by both when we spoke earlier and just now
Mhm.
your description of ontological coaching.
Yeah. So I just became fascinated with humans and what is their way of being and where they came from, who they are, what has made them. They're the subtotal of all their experiences, all their lives. So after training to be a coach, I became fascinated with conflict as to why people have these negative, for want of a better word, interactions with each other, how that comes about, and how that can actually be resolved. And in learning about that, I had to learn further about trauma, because trauma shows up in conflict resolution all the time. What has happened to somebody, why they think the way they do, how they interact with another person. So I took a deep dive into learning about trauma. And after that, a lot about internal family systems as to how people manage who they are as a result of what's happened to them. And it's a big part of when people show up to a mediation session, as to how they will be able to resolve conflict or not.
Right.
Many people, you have to have a willingness to solve conflict. People will come to a mediation table with full willingness to solve a problem. Others are coming because the court is telling them they have to. And they want to be right. And they come into a session and you can work with them. But if that willingness doesn't show up in the beginning or show up halfway through, mediation is not going to be successful for this situation that is going on. But those who have a willingness to resolve conflict, it's very powerful. Mediation can be a very powerful opportunity for people to transform their situation.
Right. And I mean, that's kind of like most of the decisions that we make as humans, as those of us that are parents. If you tell a child to do something, it may get done, but it won't repetitively get done. So if you need them to clean their room weekly and you tell them to do it now, it's probably not going to create the behavior that you need for long term until there's an internal motivation. And
how do you make it their idea that they get up and they clean their room every day? There's so many ways around that. It's just really understanding that child is not just a 6 or 7-year-old child that you can tell what to do.
Right.
I'm actually working with somebody right now that's working the same scenario, that they're trying to get their child to be better at this. And rather than being a critical parent, they're now become a curious parent, and they're getting so much more out of the child. Yeah.
And that's key, is curiosity. And I think, so I remember through my story, and when I was ready to change, there was a shift from why is the world doing this to me to what
doing
can
it for
I
you.
do? Exactly. Yeah. And what is why? And then I'm reminded, there's in our family, there's, my wife will sometimes watch childhood videos. And so she says, why, daddy, why? But when I think of curiosity and when I think of us moving beyond our current status, that's what I think of, is when we're able to innately tap back into our curiosity, we pivot, because now there's no energy for negative or lower vibrational thinking now, because now we're solution focused and we're like, how do we become better? And it's like the pivotal point of going in the opposite direction of where we were. So you've said
it's actually realizing that we've learned everything. It's all learned behaviors.
Yes. Yeah.
And so when we need to unlearn something, it's when we're getting curious, because we know these behaviors aren't really paying off for us. And it's like, okay, what do I need to unlearn and relearn something new, to just be the best version of myself?
And ultimately, you nailed it. I think there's been a consistent idea of curiosity, but in true learning, and learning can be anything. It can mean a new idea, it could be a new subject, or it could be learning a new behavior, a new way of life. Anything is that we are learning begins with unlearning. And I think that's the most difficult, because we have these habitual loops, these habitual patterns that have served us well up until now. And then we shock our system with, no, we're not going to brush our teeth this way anymore. We're going to do it different. And our body's like, no, we've done it this way for 10 years. Why are we going to change?
There's also things that we have learned. Like, for example, we've learned to have a great work ethic, right? So we can be out there and we can be working, but yet we don't have a balance in our lives. So it has paid off well. What we've learned to have a great work ethic paid you off in spades, but you don't have a balance in your life. So now you're getting curious as to, wait a minute, I'm getting burned out on this. It has served me well, but it's not serving me in my life now.
Right.
I'm having conflict with my wife because I'm always at work all day
Right.
and night.
Right.
So, so things that have paid off for us may not be serving us today. And that's what people get really curious about.
And that's one of the reasons why I love human design, is because so someone's human design can be that they are very resourceful and they have an innate ability to know how to run business, for example. But once they start pouring all of their time in there, the rest of their design could be on family, it could be on emotions, and they're not giving any attention to that. They become misaligned. And eventually, to your point, there's an imbalance because you've walked so far out of alignment that now the other balance of you, the other side of you, is wanting what you've not allowed it to have.
So what I find is the piece that you've not allowed to have can actually be something we haven't learned to do for ourselves.
I love that.
Right?
I
So
love that.
we're just unskilled. Just we don't know what we don't know, right? We have just never been able to put this into place. So it's like now you have a bigger home and it's like, oh wow, I actually deserve to have some balance in my life. I don't have to work so hard. And that's when people can connect more with their families. So it's just a skill not learned many times. Yeah.
Do you realize how powerful that statement is? I know you do, and I really hope the listeners are tapping into that, because how much different is that of saying I'm not good enough versus I just haven't learned it yet. Like this is the bicycle that I haven't learned how to ride yet.
Right. That's empowering for a client when they realize that.
Yeah, no, that is huge. Like I could feel that energy. I love that. I'm going to steal that. So just so you
go ahead, pass it on.
No, I love that. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. So, okay. Curiosity, number one, being curious. And in that phrase, I love how we can introduce different phrases to ourselves to get us out of these negative loop patterns. And so in simply saying, oh, well, this is a skill I haven't learned yet, it's a beautiful way to shift us into a different direction. Do you have any more secret ninja skills that that you could share? If anyone's feeling stuck or not sure which direction to go, which step to take.
So many people are stuck. We hear this a lot when people come to us as coaches.
Yeah.
And many times they feel they're stuck in a way, but as we start communicating and looking at that person, they realize it's actually something else. Again, what we've just been talking about is something that they just haven't learned yet. And really it's encouraging somebody just to put one foot forward, because the second one will follow. And what is the emotion behind the stuck? Many times people don't know where they want to go, but they have some idea how they're going to feel when they get, how they want to feel when they get there.
Right.
So that's a better question to ask. How do you want to feel when you get where you want to get?
Yeah.
And they want to feel happy, fulfilled, whatever that may be. So then you have a map. It's very hard for somebody to answer, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? It's one of the worst questions anybody can ask you.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you just see that deer in the headlights look. But everybody knows there's got to be more to how they're feeling right now. So it's working a lot with emotions when people are stuck. What's behind that? Is there a fear? What's the story behind the fear? So it's really getting in touch with the stuck. There's always more to it.
I love that, because so I fell in love with human behavior in grad school. So like we come at this from two different avenues, but the love of human behavior, we both share that. And so for me, and what was brilliantly stated then was that in order for us to move beyond our stuckness, our our status quo, or where we can't move or don't feel like we can move, we have to tap into our emotions.
Mhm.
But trauma disguises our emotions for something different than what it is, because it was a way for us to protect ourselves.
Mhm.
And it's so incredibly valuable for us to seek therapy, seek coaching, whatever we need in order to heal from that, so
Yeah.
we can tap into our emotions.
It's making sense of it.
Absolutely.
We never truly heal from trauma. Everybody thinks they can go to a therapist, or not everybody, but people who have been through trauma
Right.
feel they can go to a therapist, and it's their expectation they will heal from that trauma. From what I'm not a therapist, but what of my understanding and learning of trauma is that we never really heal. We learn how to be with it, how to make sense of what has happened to us, to understand the piece that we have learned, our nervous system has learned over time. How do we work with it?
Right.
How is it showing up in our lives? Is it showing up in conflict with a partner? Is it showing up with being a good father or a good mother? So it's showing up in some way, or maybe not. So it's really, how do we work? And that's a daily occurrence, working with our past.
It is. It is. And Rumi said, scars are where we let the light come in.
Absolutely.
And
There's a great song by Leonard Cohen. I don't know if you're familiar.
No, what's the name of it?
Well, I'm trying to remember the actual name of it, but the lyrics in it is like letting the light in. Like we're broken, so we're letting the light in. But yeah.
Yeah, and that Rumi quote helped me, because it was, when we feel as though we're broken, we will continue to feel broken. But if we feel there's a purpose behind that brokenness, then it was needed in order for us to move and unlearn and relearn. And
Right.
at that point, I was able to accept. And that acceptance is, all right, now this is my motivation forward. This is the platform on which I can now stand, instead of being held underneath it.
So you just brought up the concept of perception. How do we feel or look at a certain situation that has happened to us? And when we change our perception, we can actually change our lives.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we could spend hours on this. I love this. And this was the, when I first started thinking, wait a minute, there's something outside of my current state of being, which I did not like. I was introduced to people like Dr. Wayne Dyer, and he's like, hey, if you don't like what you're looking at, change the way that you look at it, and the things that you look at will change. It's that perception of, I see that as bad, but there's got to be goodness in it. And this whole dichotomy came up, and it's like, okay, what else have I been looking at through the wrong lens, and switching it? And then it became a game, because it was curiosity. It was, what else can I find that's good? And it's almost like when you're looking for a new car and you're like, I want this red car, and you see a red car everywhere.
Yeah.
It's no different. It's just now you're pointing it out because that's what you're focused on. So it's brilliant how our minds work, and how we can attract the things that we want if we hack our systems or utilize it appropriately instead of to our detriment.
And people can use this in their day-to-day, in their relationships. If they want to see a certain quality in their partner, they will see it. Or see a negative in their partner, it will show up, because that's what they're actually looking for. So when they realize they're doing that, and what part of them it's coming from, it's fascinating when they realize they're working with their own parts of who they are, because we're all different. We're all have different parts, right? So part of us, we wake up in the morning, parts of us want to watch Netflix for the day, part of us wants to go to work, right? Part of us want to go to the gym, part of us want to go have lunch, right? So we're all made up of different parts, and this is how our human self works too. And when we realize that there's a part of us that maybe has a pain or a hurt, that part of us doesn't want to show up well in a relationship. So when we're trying to work with conflict resolution, we're trying to find those parts that It's not the whole person. Many times people think they will hold it against somebody saying this person is doing this to me, when they realize this part of them is what is the problem. This part of them has created these judgments against certain situations, wherever. But once you break all that down, it becomes really interesting in helping people work with each other when they realize it's just a part of them. You know, our nervous system is like an orchestra. You know, there's all different parts to it. And when we break that down easy for people, it's a new day.
Yeah, and to add complexity to that, the nervous system reacts to our endocrine system, which is responsible for our emotional system, and they all
Right.
work together. And if one is out of balance, the other pick up the slack. So I love how that was identified, because if our whole self was harmed, we wouldn't be able to function.
No.
And I think in our minds we make this bigger than what it actually is, because we think our whole self is broken, and it's like, no, it's just a piece over here that we're holding on to, that we can actually work through this.
This is the piece that gets triggered. The rest of us doesn't. The rest of us can go on every day. But this part of us is triggered today by somebody. And but when you get to know that and why that part has been hurt, it's a whole new day for somebody to be able to change how they react into a response. So they just take a breath and understand why somebody said or did the way they did something.
Yeah.
And they can be more skillful. Again, it's the skillful thing about how they work with the situation.
Yeah, you're reminding me of a book. What you think of me is none of my business.
Yes, I love that book.
Yeah, because ultimately that's it. Because if people are triggering us, we just gave them our power, and we said, here you go, you have complete total control of me right now.
Absolutely.
And gaining back our self-power is huge, and it's one step at a time. To your point, yes, if you are stuck, take one step, because the other will follow. And I mean, any race, any marathon began with the first step, and there's a starting line, and to your point, there's a goal. Like, we don't have to know exactly how to get there, but what would it feel like getting to that point? And then we can work on the rest of it as we go. I love that. Is there anything else that we haven't covered, or anything else that you would want to share?
One little tip that I like to, when I'm coaching, especially with even individuals, but as couples, is to lose the word you. You as a blame word. You did this. You made me feel this way. Nobody can ever make you feel something. You feel it yourself. So when you're in an interaction, you're maybe displeased with something, is don't say you did this. Is I feel like this when this situation happens. So losing the word you is very powerful. And it is a way forward in people actually understanding each other.
I love that, because it's powerful on both sides. It takes the anger out of me pointing the finger, and it also allows the other person to see that I'm simply sharing how I feel.
Exactly. Yeah. So it improves listening skills. Yeah.
Which is very hard. Listening is very hard when you're up here on your emotions.
When I do a mediation session, I invite, when I do an introduction, and then I will open it up, and I invite them both to listen as much as they're wanting to tell their story about what has happened, is to invite them to listen to each other and maybe learn something new. Because when you come to a mediation session, you're actually in a place of judgment. You feel you're right in some way. You can't wait to tell your story. But as soon as you judge that other person, you stop learning about them and the situation. So we invite them both to listen to each other a little more, and then maybe even ask them if they learned anything from each other's story. Then you can have some idea of their ability to listen in this moment.
I love that. It's like a little test, but also a prompt to help them on their journey
Grounding.
of yes, yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Oh, I love that.
Mhm.
I love that. Last question, second to last question. I lied. If there was one book, podcast, thought leader, one resource that completely changed the trajectory of your life that you would recommend, what would that one resource be?
So in my seeking of knowledge, when I did my trauma sensitive mindfulness course, um, I then went on to have the pleasure of working with David Treleaven, who is the author of the book Trauma Sensitive Mindfulness. That changed my world of understanding the nervous system. And David mentored me for a year in conflict as well. So that just blew my mind. It gave me a huge understanding of where people are coming with conflict. And usually when somebody is taking a side, which is a big thing in conflict because the situation can happen and somebody on the outside is taking a side.
Right.
And that person on the outside they will take their choice will be where they feel safer. It's not necessarily will have a positive on both parties. They will go to where they're safe. So I think that was the biggest message that I got from David's work with me as well of understanding conflict. But his book was fantastic, and I still read it every so often. I'll pick it up. But he talks about the nervous system of and how what trauma can actually do to the body, and how we have to stay in this window of tolerance, and that's our grounded space. But we in a place of trauma, we can go to two extremes. We can go to a very nervous, anxiety place, or go to a place of numbness. And either can happen in trauma. But when we're in this more balanced spot is when we can think more logically. And so that's when I talk about grounding people before we actually start a mediation session. So yeah, he's been a big impact on my life and my work.
Oh, that's awesome because from a pathophysiological side of our bodies, it's always seeking safety. It's always trying to keep us safe.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
always trying to keep us from danger. And
Mhm.
it thinks it's helping us, but we have this cortisol release that is continuing to work against us. So I love the neuro side of that, of
Yeah.
the safety. And yes, of course, we're going to go to where we feel safe. Like,
Mhm.
and when you say it out loud, it's like, yeah, that makes total sense. But it's one of
Yeah.
those so simplistic yet profound ideas and
Yeah.
understanding. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Many times people can come in mediation going, I don't understand why my mother took her side. And that when you help them understand how somebody takes a side, they say, oh, yeah, now I get it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a huge part.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for this. Where can people find you? If someone's like, wait a minute, I could definitely benefit from Avril's coaching. Where can they find you?
I have a website online. It's just avrilhogan.com. I'm on LinkedIn. People can contact me. You can find me online. Just Google my name and you can find me.
Perfect. And we're going to have all those links in the description as well to make it easier. So I really hope and I want people to reach out to you to help make this world a better place, because when two humans have better conversations, have better relationships because they are empowered to be better people, we have the ability to change the world. So I love what you're doing.
I would love people to know that conflict can actually be an opportunity for huge transformation. I've seen that. I've seen it happen in families, in couples, in the workplace. It's very, very powerful. So embrace it rather than avoid it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, because we only can grow when we're presented with discomfort.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
conflict in any manner is a way for us to gain a better understanding of ourselves and the situation. So I love that. So just shift the perspective and the
Right.
perceptions, and reach out to Avril to help you.
Yeah. I'm happy to help anybody who is willing to look at their conflict. Yeah.
Absolutely. And this has been fantastic. I could go on for forever.
We can talk
So
forever.
we will have to come in for a part two and expand on these these heart-brain coherencies of life. So, Avril, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, and hello to everybody out there.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. This has been fantastic, and I am leaving this a better person. This is a true Ubuntu I am because we are moment, because I feel as though I have more to teach and more to offer from this. And my hopes and my dreams and my prayers is that you will too. And we will take this knowledge and we'll keep expanding on it, and we will create better humans. But it starts with us, and
Yes.
we create better relationships because we are more empathetic and we are more compassion driven for the collective good. So thank you so much. And until next time, be well, be loved. Thank you for joining me on Pep Talks with Eric, where together we shift our focus, brace connection, and drive towards a more fulfilling life. Remember, it's not just about where you're headed, but how you choose to travel along the way. As you continue your journey, know that you have the power to change lanes and focus on the path that leads to positivity, purpose, and connection. Let's stay connected and continue empowering your journey one commute at a time. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. And until then, be well, be loved.